thank you for joining us this evening. It's a particularly warm evening for you to be sitting inside and doing this, so thank you. And this is going to be a very different sort of event for us. I wish we could be with you in person to celebrate our 30 years. We were going to do things at Ocean Gateway, and we've divvied that up into different events, and this is one of the key ones, I think. But celebrating 30 years is important. So we wanted to find a way to do it that was assuredly safe for everybody. For those of you who are joining us and may not know much about Friends of Casco Bay, and we understand that we have a number of you, some pretty far afield, not even on this continent, thank you very much. Let's get oriented first. We're located here on the mid-southern coast of Maine in the eastern part of the United States. You may have heard of the other Portland in Washington State on the west coast. This is the East Coast Portland, the important one we think is here, where I'm sitting near the shores of Casco Bay right now. And while we have a lot of rural area here and we have hundreds of islands in the bay, it's very beautiful. Our region also encompasses the most densely populated part of the state of Maine. And while Maine is a large state, the Casco Bay watershed makes up less than 3% of the landmass, with lots of lakes and streams and rivers. We have 25% of the state's population living in 41 communities on 3% of the landmass. So our activities can have a huge impact, both good and bad, on the water quality of Casco Bay. And water quality is what we focus on. We believe clean water is fundamental habitat, frankly, and we've been collecting data on water quality for the better part of 30 years. We've learned a lot, and many of you with this evening who know us well many of you have been instrumental, directly and indirectly, in making that happen. We are not doing science for the sake of science. We use our data expressly to communicate with the community about what we are seeing and communicate with the regulators and work together to find improvements to the health of the bay. Our volunteer, community-based water reporter observation network, these individuals help us observe what's happening around the bay, and you all help us. And our Casco Bay Keeper, we were a founding member of Waterkeeper Alliance, which is worldwide. You all help us advocate for reducing pollution and changing behavior, tightening up laws, ordinances, and regulations to continue to improve and protect the water quality in the bay. We've gotten a lot done in the last 30 years, and you can find out a lot about that on our website, cascobay.org. I'm honored this evening to be able to share with you some really special creativity. We're going to show a film, and then we'll spend time with our guest. But first, we'll show you this film. This 4-minute film is about our work in Casco Bay. We are indebted to the filmmakers at Knack Factory. I'll say a little bit about them afterwards. They are a Maine-based creative agency that specializes, as you will see, in video storytelling. Sarah is behind the scenes this evening. You heard her voice earlier as well as mine. I'm trying to work out tech things. She's performing all kinds of technical magic. So I'm going to go on mute and let Sarah roll the film, and I'll join you afterwards.
Casco Bay is the beginning of the wonderful islands of Maine. We count up to 365 in our calendar islands. The work that Friends of Casco Bay has done and continues to do is vitally important to us. I think about future generations. It takes a long time to steer the environmental ship. We use a resource, and that resource needs to be maintained and minded, just like the roof on your home. They're on the mission on a 24/7 basis, and it absolutely impacts the environmental and economic health of the bay.
I've been very fortunate to have lived on Casco Bay most of my life. As a young child, I sent a bottle with a note off Bub's Hole at the top of Casino Beach, and it was picked up by a school teacher in England. So that made me realize that Casco Bay is part of the global oceans. Every day I run along Casco Bay, there's something new that I see. There's never a day I take it for granted.
All my life I've just been a water person. It's like my place, and I know that that's true for many Mainers. I'm sort of like the Lorax of the Bay. I speak for the Bay. As Baykeeper, I get a lot of information in from other people in addition to what our staff observes, and then I use that information to improve and protect its water quality. What I've seen are the impacts of climate change, the changes in storm intensity, the sea level rise, the changes in water chemistry, the changes in the shift of species, what's here, what's moving out. That's been the biggest threat.
The world is becoming more and more dependent on small community-based efforts and organizations to make the change happen that we've got to see happen. The work that we do at Friends of Casco Bay shows us that climate change is right here. We have expertise in collecting water quality data, and we don't just collect that data for the sake of science. We have always used that science to talk with our community and advocate for better behavioral practices and regulations and laws that will continue to help improve the health of the Bay. Doesn't feel like a lot that we can do globally right now, but we can do a lot on a local level, and that's where this work makes a heck of a difference to me. It's a way of feeling hopeful in the face of something that is really a wave of daunting, irreversible change. Anything that you can do in your lifestyle that reduces your carbon and nitrogen footprints, those are really valuable things to do. We're willing to try to find the expertise and then have the hard conversations with people about how are we going to move the needle together on improving the health of the Bay. We don't do this work alone.
Well, I hope you liked that. And if you did and you want to watch it again, you can share it with your friends. It's on our website, cascobay.org. Many thanks to the Nat Factory film producers, co-founder Alex Steed and Lindsay Heald, as well as their camera people, Tom Starkey, and he was a drone operator as well, and Taden Brown. The team spent a week on the water with our staff last summer to create the film, and they did it for a fraction. So we're really appreciative. And they did it in commemoration of our 30th. So we're feeling appreciated in the community for sure. If you're concerned about the impacts of climate change in Casco Bay, then know this: the Bay is changing, and it's changing quickly. We have a continuous monitoring station that's been monitoring water quality parameters 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for 5 years. We want to put 2 more continuous monitoring stations in the Bay, and we are in the process of building a climate change in Casco Bay fund. This is our home. This is where we live, work, and play and find inspiration. And so today, actually, we are launching the public phase of this campaign. We are already 86% of the way to our $1.5 million goal. We only have 210,000 to go. And tomorrow, 7,300 packets are going into the mail to inform many of you who have not yet donated about what we're doing and what our plan is for the next 10 years. I like thinking in terms of a decade instead of just a year at a time. So for those of you who are close to us, be watching your mail, and I ask you to please give as generously as you can. This is a very personally important effort to me. I think it brings together all the strengths of our organization. And now we'll shift a little bit, a big pivot in the event. It's my singular honor and pleasure and delight to introduce to you our guest this evening, Gary Wallace. He's authored 21 poetry collections. He's a publisher, an editor, a bookstore owner, Gulf of Maine Books here in Brunswick, Maine. And he happens to be a friend of mine since childhood. I've known Gary since I was 5. Here he is. We grew up together in Belfast, Maine on Penobscot Bay at a time when, well, let's just say water quality left a lot to be desired. Gary, we just lost you on video, so let's see if we can get you back. I'll continue with your introduction. You all read his bio in the invitation. There you are. This is great. And I have to say, it has been a delight to watch Gary over the years engage every type of person in every circumstance you could possibly imagine to explore their use of words. And I mean, from Croatia to Italy to Preble Street, from colleges to halfway houses, group homes and prisons and writing retreats. Really, he's a recipient of numerous awards, including an honorary doctorate of humane letters. So now I get to welcome you, my friend, Dr. Gary Wallace. How are you?
Hi. Hi.
Thank you for joining us. And the reason that you're here, really in large part, is that Will on our staff, who everyone saw earlier, had the inspiration to ask you if you would be willing to do a poem in honor of our 30th. And lo and behold, you did, and you would have shared it with us at Ocean Gateway. But now we have this flat medium, but we're going to do that. We're going to do that anyway. I think as one of the people I've known, even before I became a human ecologist and did all the interdisciplinary work that I've done, you were somebody who was thinking in terms of integrated bioregional thinking before a lot of people were. And I love that you've always done that. And you've tried to make that accessible through the art of poetry and writing, including this book from 1977, this Gulf of Maine Almanac. I have a published paper in here, and Steve Catone is in here, a number of people. This is a very multidisciplinary bioregional journal that you published in 1977, my goodness. So tell us about your poem for Casco Bay.
Well, why don't I just read the poem for Casco Bay first, and then you can see what you think.
Well, that would be great. And I understand there's some images that are going to go on behind us. So I'm gonna.
You're gone. Kathy's gone. Okay. For Casco Bay, for us. Rising in the mountains, the water finding its way from granite to the bay, we are water and we want to flow through our lives. Here a forest, here a town flowing down. Here are rocks, falls, we fall at the end, at the mouth, into a larger body, our body of water to become more than we are, where the future flows into the sea, and all that you see, we are water. We are patterns in water. We are currents, eddies. We pool and move on. We flow. How many rivers flow into the bay? How many streams into the rivers? Where does the rain go? Where does the wind go? Bays to the ocean. How much moonlight touches the water? How many fish find their way home? We are water and we want to flow in beauty, in light, in whatever weather. The rocks are singing as water passes over. It is high tide and our hearts are full. It is low tide and we are waiting. We've been waiting for you for thousands of years. We are rocks. We are water. The water is the bay. The wind is the bay. The fish, the birds, the plants, we are the bay. What happens to water happens to us. We are water and we want to flow, saying, this is our body and we are home. We rise as water rises. We fall as water falls. We are water. We are the bay. We are water. We are the bay. Yeah.
I just love that.
Thanks.
Love that. Do you want to say a little about what inspired you to write that? What helped you get that moving on the page?
Well, in thinking about Casco Bay, you have to include the sources of the bay and the regions through which those sources travel to get to what we see on the map as Casco Bay, because the water doesn't just start there, and we don't just start there. So, and as you know, everything that comes down those waterways goes into the bay. And so I wanted to kind of, first of all, write about the idea that, and our bodies are pretty much a high percentage water. So we are water. And the other point that I really wanted to make, that what happens to the bay happens to us. And that's not a poetic image. That's true. It's true. What happens to the water happens to us. I mean, we ingest water every day. We're made of water. We see the water. We're near to the water. We eat things from the water. We allow millions of gallons of our wastewater to go into the water. So what happens to the water literally does happen to us. It's not necessarily kind of a mythopoetic thing happening. It's really, I realize that this is the arts and humanities segment, but my poems try not to fly in the face of science. I try to include science and include what's really going on, because, I've lived in Maine all my life, and one lifetime is not enough to learn everything about all the cycles within which you live, and not enough time to learn how to be the best kind of citizen you can be, the least disruptive citizen, because there are so many different cycles to learn about. But the attempt to keep on learning and striving to keep on learning and experiencing the beauties and intelligences of your watershed, that's a pretty cool lifetime pursuit.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's a very cool thing. I wonder if we might engage the audience in an exercise that you and I talked about last week. And that is, you and I talked about wondering what would be the imagery that would pop up in people's heads when they heard this poem, and what might be the words or phrases that people caught. And I learned on a writing retreat with Naomi years ago, there's something about reading through a poem more than once, especially when you first hear it. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to click off the video and go mute again and have you read the poem a second time. And I challenge you in the audience, you attendees, to use the chat function to just put in a word or two about whatever phrase you heard or an image that you get that resonates with you from this. And we're not going to have images behind Gary this time. You can just either watch him or close your eyes or look out the window and then type something into chat and experience. I want you to experience his poem again. Is that okay with you, Gary?
Well, I have to apologize in advance for putting people through the same poem twice.
No, I think people
sure.
will hear something. They'll hear something they didn't hear.
And I never read them the same way anyway, so we'll see. Okay. For Casco Bay, for us, rising in the mountains, the water finding its way from granite to the bay, we are water and we want to flow through our lives. Here a forest, here a town flowing down. Here are rocks, falls. We fall at the end, at the mouth, into a larger body, our body, a body of water to become more than we are, where the future flows into the sea and all that you can see. We are water. We are patterns in water. We are currents, eddies. We pool and move on. We flow. How many rivers flow into the bay? How many streams into the rivers? Where does the rain go? Where does the wind go? Bays to the ocean. How much moonlight touches the water? How many fish find their way home? We are water and we want to flow in beauty, in light, in whatever weather. The rocks are singing as the water passes over. It is high tide and our hearts are full. It is low tide and we are waiting. We have been waiting for you for thousands of years. We are rocks. We are water. The water is the bay. The wind is the bay. The fish, the birds, the planets. We are the bay. What happens to water happens to us. We are water and we want to flow, saying, this is our body and we are home. This is our body and we are home. We rise as water rises. We fall as water falls. We are water. We are the bay. We are water. We are the bay.
I just love that. I love that. And every time I read it or hear it, something else pops out. I don't know how many people attending know this about your background and the times that you spent when you were younger living at Gary Snyder's, one of the beat poets, and that you had majored in Japanese and that you have a very Eastern approach to a lot of things, which I think you're probably drawn to that by having an integrative mind to begin with. But one of the things that struck me right after I first read your poem, I was rereading Zen and the Art of Archery, which is one of my favorites. My father did all this. I did all this work with him in metaphysics for years. So this is one of my little go-to books. But your first line where you talk about granite and water moving through granite, and you were saying earlier to the audience just now about, how do we live in a way that's the right way to live? And the quote in this book says, from Lao Tzu, right living is like water. which of all things the most yielding, right? Water flows around everything, can overwhelm that which of all things is the most hard. And I think of granite as being that, and water is so transformative, and yet it's so elusive in many ways, form wise, as opposed to granite. You've become really interested in geology over the last few years, and I've seen you incorporating more and more about geology into your writings and your investigations, I would even call them. What got you interested in looking at geology more as an artistic, metaphorical place to go, as well as a bioregional, substantive
Well,
place?
part of it is well, you know, my family and both my grandfathers were connected with quarries. My mother's father lived in Prospect in Frankfurt and worked on the Mount Waldo quarry next to the Penobscot River. Fort Knox's, all the granite in Fort Knox pretty much came from Mount Waldo, but he was there after that. And my other grandfather worked with quarries in Vermont. So there's always been kind of an interest in granite. But then in the last few years, I've just become more and more interested. I think a friend, David Abram, was staying here with us, and we were talking about, we were going to Acadia, and he said to me that he thought that lichen was the spoken language of granite. So I started looking at granite and looking at lichen and looking at those communities, and they do change over time. And granite is a migratory species. Granite doesn't even stay still. You know, I mean, think of how the planet has changed over the last few million years. You know, granite moves around too, and now we cut it out and turn it into monuments and stuff, and then we tear them down. You know, the granite moves. You can see flow lines in granite when you're looking at it. You can see that it used to move, and it still does, just more slowly. There's a different time scheme.
It's a different time scale, totally different time scale, totally. Well, you know, these are really challenging times. You know, we've always had heat waves in Maine, but today is, you know, this whole summer is a reminder. In fact, we put up new temperature data on the website this afternoon, and it's just scary. I mean, it makes me that much gladder that we're putting a couple more continuous monitoring stations in the Bay, and we're getting well supported to do that. But I want to shift a little bit in terms of the Bay itself. You were, I don't know, I think you were approached, maybe you inspired this, but I think you were approached to do some talk about Edna St. Vincent Millay this winter, and that just took off. It turns out she's had this incredible relationship with Ragged Island here in the eastern part of Casco Bay. Mm-hmm. Can you say more about what got you involved in that and her relationship to the Bay and the island?
I've been involved with Millay stuff for maybe a couple decades.
No kidding. Wow.
Ramona Barth, may she live in heaven forever, with Edna St. Vincent Millay, although I'm not sure she went to heaven. We did a lot of Millay we read poetry on Millay's birthday on top of Mount Batty, which is not really advisable because her birthday's in February. It can get really cold on top of Mount Batty. Several summers we leased a cruise boat and took it from Cook's Lobster House in Bailey's Island out around Ragged Island, which is off Bailey's Island in Casco Bay, and was owned for a number of years by Edna St. Vincent Millay and her husband. And Millay Millay grew up in Rockland and Camden, but in her adult life, she and her husband bought this island, Ragged Island, and she would go there to get away from things and retreat and regain her health, and wrote a number of beautiful poems, either about the island itself or about the stretch of water between Land's End, Bailey's Island, and Ragged Island. And so we've had a lot of Ragged Island events and a lot of Millay events. And recently, Michelle Gifford and a number of other people, Michelle signed up for this. She may be listening. Thank you, Michelle. They got together and saved the house that Millay was born in Rockland. She was literally born in one of the rooms of the house, and it's now become a Millay center, and it's moving forward. And so there are Millay events at the Farnsworth on her birthday. And, you know, we're bringing, Millay won the Pulitzer Prize. She was one of the most famous poets of her time, sort of not as well thought of right now, but she, you know, poets come and go, you know. So yeah, she's a really important Casco Bay poet. I mean, she is.
Yeah. And I have to say, as an aside, you've done so much for Maine writers and Maine writers who've disappeared. Like you brought all the Ruth Moore books, poems, and novels back into print years
Right.
ago, and I treasure her work. Well, I wonder, would you do us a favor? Do you have Ragged Island by
I
Edna?
do.
Do you have it at hand?
I
That
just
would you
happen.
mind reading that? I'll go off again because I
Yeah.
would love you to read that poem. Okay, I'll see you
Okay.
in a minute. Thank you.
So this is Ragged Island by Edna St. Vincent Millay. There where those black spruces crowd to the edge of the precipitous cliff above your boat, under the eastern wall of the island, and no wave breaks, as if all had been done and long ago that needed doing, and the cold tide, unimpeded by shoal or shelving ledge, moves up and down instead of in and out. And there is no driftwood there because there is no beach, clean cliff going down as deep as clear water can reach. No driftwood such as abounds on the roaring shingle to be hefted home for fires in the kitchen stove, barrels banged ashore about the boiling outer harbor, lobster buoys on the eelgrass of the sheltered cove. There, thought unbraids itself and the mind becomes single. There you row with tranquil oars, and the ocean shows no scar from the cutting of your placid keel. Care becomes senseless there, pride and promotion remote. You only look, you scarcely feel. Even adventure, with its vital uses, is aimless ardor now, and thrift is waste. Oh, to be there under the silent spruces, where the wide, quiet evening darkens without haste over a sea with death acquainted, yet forever chaste.
I love it more
And
every time I read it or hear it. Her alliterations are crazy good. And as a writer, I just like it's such a good poem. It's so good. All of you attendees find this poem, read it a few times, keep it around, especially if you have summer guests, make them read it. It's so good. It's so good. Um, well, I don't know what more you might want to say, and I don't want to steal time from you, but I will confess to the attendees that you sent around a poem yesterday. I'm so glad I'm on your email list. You all want to get on his email list. It's a bit long, but this Brother Coyote poem, and it's ostensibly about plants. And I read the overstory by Richard Powers because of you. You were one of the early people who read it and said, if you think ecologically, this is a rich book. It's not for everyone. I've learned that. There are three groups of people who don't read it, people who read it and go, I don't know, and people who go, oh my God, that was so good. And I'm one of those. I really liked it. The thing about this poem, even though it's about plants, he actually mentions science. It's an ecological poem in so many ways. And I don't, do you have all I have to offer? Do you have that at hand?
I do. I have all you have to offer.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. That's so good.
Yeah. No, I don't.
I mean, I want to make the most of the time that we have, and let's have you read this, and then I'll come back. We'll talk a little, and then we'll have Will come in and see if there are any questions that have come up through the chat.
Great.
So if any of you have questions, put them in chat. Will pull something out, and he'll join us, and I will say.
So I will say that the author of this poem is Gary Paul Nabin, and Gary is a MacArthur Foundation winning ethnobotanist. He used to be the ethnobotanist for the Desert Museum in Tucson. He's written a number of really incredible books, especially a book about pollinators. He's also a poet, and he writes under the name of Brother Coyote. So Brother Coyote sent out this yesterday. All I have to offer, as one of those who have had the honor of being called to be among your friends, this is all I have to offer. Those of us who have been given the blessing to deeply delve into the lives of plants are gifted with the opportunity to let them ground us in the earth forever. What we learn through them is this, that even the most gorgeous or delicious plant in the world must be fitted to a context that honors its particular stance, or else we will be wasting its gift. What I mean is that a plant never stands in isolation, but is a holobiont woven into a fabric of mycorrhizal threads, bacterial nodules, resplendent pollinators, and allegiant seed dispersers who have shaped it and us as much as we shape them. The reason to be engaged in science is to each day become more humble, more uncertain that there is only one way of looking at or being in the world, to accept our capacity for being wrong, and to embrace how truth is iterative and never final. When we carry that sensibility with us, we slowly come to understand that every tyranny, every disparity that has made humans less than what we should be, has a solution to be found in the myriad ways plants have managed to live under harsh and unforgiving circumstances like those we are living in now, while sustaining their dignity and their capacity to delight. If ever we adopt fresh ways of living in this world that will help us all survive, plants can offer us options that few human words have yet to circumscribe. A poem by Gary Nabin.
I hope people can find that online. I love that. And again, it's that theme also, if we can learn to live the right way. And that's where I wish the bioregional approach and thinking ecologically, not just environmentally, had caught on long ago. We might not be in this climate change fix that we're in. But I'm curious, as Will gets ready to join us, there's a lot of opportunity to become misanthropic when you've looked at, you know, ecological degradation all our lives, as we have in the conversations we've had over the years. You've been just the opposite. I mean, there's not a cynical bone in you in terms of humanity, maybe in terms of individuals who are deserving, who will go unnamed here, but I'm interested in, as a doctor of humane letters, you are one of the more humane people in this stage of life that I know. Knowing what you know and knowing what we know, I mean, honestly, Gary, sometimes I've thought, as important and essential as science is in my life, I look to the arts now to try to bring more people along and keep us in touch with our hearts, to keep us out of despondency, and to maybe do a different kind of communicating about all of this than science. Science has been ineffective in getting enough attention to turn things around, and we need the community of arts and humanities to help us, right?
Well, I think so, but yeah. I think the arts also, you know, music and dance and painting and good cooking, eating locally, all of those things go not just to your intelligence, but also to your heart. So, you know, we need to find ways to involve every part of your body in being a good citizen of the watershed, or, you know, where you are. You know, like Gary's poem says, you never can learn enough about how to live well in the place where you are, where you choose. Yeah. But you can learn to ignore political boundaries and find out what the real boundaries are, you know, and find out where your water comes from, where it goes, where the air is coming from, what plants do well there, what the soil type is, what the geology, you know, are you living near the Cape Elizabeth formation, or is it the Bucksport formation, or are you on the Waldoboro granite like I have? You know, there's all these layers of things, and your own body is a bioregion for lots and lots and lots of little critters who, if they got out beyond your skin, wouldn't make it. You know, you are a bioregion for a number of beings. You know, much of the DNA in your body isn't your DNA, you know, so there's just so much going on.
Well, you know, our old joke from decades ago, nature, I keep trying to get away from it, but it's everywhere.
Yeah. And don't you think, as people are living in isolation and quarantine, people are going out and looking at the comet, and they're hearing bird songs again, and they're noticing that the fish are coming back and the deer seem to be coming closer. There's all these things happening that whole migrations are still happening with or without us. You know, we may destroy the stopover places, you know, so they have nothing to feed while they're moving, but all those things, the natural world is happening with or without us.
Yeah, thank goodness.
You know, and probably better without us, you know.
That's where
I
the
am cynical,
misanthropy come
Kathy. I
in.
am.
Yeah, see, there it is.
I
There it is.
am
Yeah,
cynical.
I think that sometimes too, but we are what we are. Well, Will,
my
I'm glad to
my
see
my teacher now, Sakaki, my mentor in life,
you.
he would hear these things and he would say, "No need to survive. Why survive? No need for humans to survive." Like, yeah,
This is very
maybe.
wise. Gary's talking about Nanao Sakaki and Sakaki, one of my favorite poets, not only because he's so bioregional, and Zen doesn't even say it, but he also did a poem that's just a series of numbers that, as a person who loves sound and words and numbers, I love that. It's on the back cover of one of his books. I mean, he even wrote poetry only using numbers, and it resonates. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, I wish that we had a lot more time. We're going to turn now. Will, I'm so glad you joined us, because we really want to try to keep this. We promised people 45 minutes, not too long. But I'm glad you're with us. And do you have any questions for Gary? I assume none for me, but yeah.
There aren't a ton of questions on chat, but I do have some questions. The first one's a really basic one, and maybe Kathy, you could throw this into chat. But what the name and the author of the last poem that Gary read that he had sent out to you by email.
I have it by a different name, so hold on a second, because I have him with his Indian name, I think, or something. I have him as Brother Coyote OEF. So Gary, can you spell out?
Okay, his name is, he's actually a Lebanese American, and his name is Gary Paul Nabhan, Nabhan, and he lives in Arizona, where he's the farthest thing from water. You know, he's lived in Tucson. Now he lives up around Flagstaff, I think. But an amazing man. He won a MacArthur primarily for his work with pollinators, and also in reintroducing traditional diets to Native American, indigenous people in the Southwest as a way of fighting diabetes. You know, eating locally as actually saving your life. But all I have to offer, that poem I don't think is anywhere on the internet yet, but it will be at the Rewilding blog site, a website pretty soon.
Called Rewilding Earth, that
yeah,
is.
Rewilding Earth.
The
where
Casco
my
Bay
poem
poem is also
yeah.
up there with the photo that's behind you with it. Yeah.
That's right. We stole that. Yeah, we stole that photo.
That's good. Are you going to would you put his poem up on your blog site? Gary has a blog as well.
Sure, I could. Yeah. That, because it was such a pleasure to, you know, every now and then a poem comes in your email, and it's just such a pleasure to see it.
Yeah.
And to read it, and then, you know,
I read it 6 times last night and went, oh, I just love this poem. I'm so glad that you read it and that you read these other poems. Yes, Will.
Well, in the chat, Gary, people are trying to nominate you for president. They're trying to nominate you as poet laureate for Casco Bay. Just so
but
you
I
know,
don't live on Casco Bay anymore.
Just so you know, Dr. Lawless.
I live on Damascotta Lake.
But I was wondering, what's your writing process, Gary? Do you have time that you set aside, or you just wait for Calliope to sit next to you?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have time to set aside at the beginning. I will write on envelopes and pieces of paper and write while I'm driving, and then assemble all of those. Like you can see, if you look at the Casco Bay poem, there are sections. You know, it's not all one piece, but I wanted it to flow and then hit some rocks and then flow again. And you know, I wanted no dams. I took all the dams out, but I wanted it to flow. And I like reading my poems out loud. I miss being able to go and read my poems out loud these days. And I really approach poetry as an oral art, in part because I've worked with a lot of communities who either don't read or write or have yet to get good English skills. So I like to emphasize that poetry is an oral art. So I like to hear it, and I like to hear my poems out loud, you know. So I do make changes based on the performance of it and the orality of it, and you know, so to make it sound better. Yeah. Kathy likes alliteration, I think so.
I like a lot of things. I'm an old jazz person, you know that, and I like double entendres. I like like at the end of one of these poems, the last word is chaste. And if you don't know that it's C-H-A-S-T-E, you don't know if it's C-H-A-S-E-D.
That was Malay. That was in the
Malay.
St. Vincent Malay, yeah.
So right, you don't know if you're only
He was
listening
not
to
chaste.
She was not chaste. Yeah, she had
He
a
was
lot of,
chaste, yeah.
I think
She
she
was chaste
used
a lot.
Ragged Island to dry out a lot. She had a
Yeah.
lot going on, but we'll let the attendees explore.
Well, they had a rule. She and her husband had a rule that if you came to Ragged Island, the ocean did not like bathing suits, and it did not appreciate people swimming in it wearing clothing. So everyone was, so the
They're nude all
lobstermen
the
would
time.
fish close to the island, you know.
I bet they did. I bet they did. Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I think we're starting to close in on time here. Will, if you don't have any, do you have any more questions?
No one wants to ask a question.
There's so much activity in
oh,
chat, though. You
man.
have to know. I'm so elated to you attendees. You've all been weighing in on all kinds of things, and we'll be able to download all of that and sift through it. And we'll send Gary a copy of the chat.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch the things coming up
Yeah,
here.
and the other thing that's come up is be sure to mention Gulf of Maine Books, which Kathy mentioned. But that's really become a community hub, and I know it's been hard during this pandemic time, Gary. But
yeah,
how did you first, envision the Gulf of Maine Books and what's
Beth
that been
Leonard
like
and
over the
I,
past 40 years, right?
Yeah, 41. Yeah, Beth Leonard and I started it, and we wanted to use the name Gulf of Maine to get people to think bi-regionally, to think about where we actually were. And at the beginning, we were going to Newfoundland and Labrador fairly often, and we felt that Maine was more connected to New Brunswick and Nova Scotia than it was to Connecticut and New York. And to get to people to think about protecting something that went from Cape Cod, up to the end of Nova Scotia as a single body, and all the things that went into that, and the cultures that rise up out of that, and the song cultures, the poetry cultures, the painters, the knitters, the cooks, all of that is inspired by that larger region. That first book, Kathy, I was just thinking about that, the 1977 Gulf of Maine Reader. We had a section on humor by Marshall Dodge, and we had Gordon Bach writing songs. We had Kathy writing about bluefin tuna, Steve Katona writing about whales in Maine. Yeah, just wonderful.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was incredible.
It's out of print. It's gone, but it was it was.
I have a copy. Yeah. Well, we've run out of time, I'm afraid. So I need to do the wrap up and the gratitude things. First, I want to thank Knack Factory again. I want you all to know that this event is being recorded, so you should be receiving a follow-up link, assuming we had no tech glitches about recording it, so that you can pass it on to your friends if you want to do that. I want to thank Sarah Byron, whose beautiful painting was behind Will. And another painting of hers in Casco Bay was used in the email invitation that went out. She's doing lovely, lovely paintings from all over the world, but also Casco Bay. I want to thank Sarah Lyman for her tech support. She's just a whiz at this stuff, and we couldn't do it without you, Sarah. I want to encourage all of you to go to our website. There's lots of information there. Will, thank you for the inspiration for this event. You're the one who thought we should get Gary to do a poem, and then we turned it into this, and I'm really grateful for that. I want to thank all of the attendees for not only joining us, but participating in the chat. That makes it feel a little less two-dimensional for all of us. That's really, really good. And Gary, I thank you for not only being our guest, but generously writing a poem, spending time with us, for being you. I've cherished our friendship my entire life, and I just thank you for helping to try to make the world a better place. It's a thing.
And you're going to put the poem up on the website, right? So people could actually,
on our website now.
if anyone wants to read it.
It's on our website now. It's also on Rewilding Earth, but yes, it's on our website now. So I implore you all to go to our website and look around and check out the temperature data that went up today. And if you haven't yet, please support the Climate Fund. For us, it's a decade of important work for us to say, how is the Bay changing? It's changing quickly, and this is an incredibly cost-efficient way to do it. We're happy to talk with you. You'll get information later in the week about it. So there's all that. But I'm really delighted to do an event that's about other human realms than just science and advocacy and regulations. And this has really been a delight with you, Gary. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank
so
you.
much. It's
Thanks
good
for
to
all
see
you guys do.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Everyone, go to Gulf of Maine Books. Buy books from them. Keep them going, please. All right. Thank you all. Bye.